Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another review for Legion. This is Season 2, Episode 10, Chapter 18. Ian here hanging out with you just for a little bit more. We are right on the edge of the season finale. That is next episode. And man, I think things are finally getting ramped up to where they should be. You could argue, a little late, maybe, and I'm still salty over that filler episode way back when with the other possibilities of David, but that is neither here nor there. We're looking right now at the present, man, and it's looking like a big showdown's right here on the horizon. So, as always, got to get the important stuff out of the way. Spoiler territory ahead if you're looking to check this out on another avenue of some sort or Hulu, who knows, wherever you're watching this. Just so you know, you've been warned. For those of you who want to stick with it, here we go. So this episode literally kicks off with a flash of lightning, but not just any lightning. This looks like a flash that signifies future David, or at least we get a look into what he might become or what he may be. He's in a stormy field or a desert of some kind. It looks like a bunch of troops are coming after him, but he's looking a lot like the David, like a lot like the Legion from the comic series, especially his hair. That's one thing that really halted me here. And we've had all these teasers and links to X-Men and everything else, but nothing's ever been. Uh, we've had this carrot dangled in front of us for basically 2 seasons now, and we still haven't fully kicked off with that. But this is about as close as you're probably gonna get, and this has been hinted on the last episode and the few before that, uh, heck, not just a few before, most of this season, that David's the villain here, or at least he has the potential to become the villain. The factors that lead him down that path, that influence him there, that's what we've been looking for all season. But we're starting to see some of the pieces come on the table. I, for one, coming into this episode, was not convinced that David could just turn on a dime. I didn't think there was enough precedent. Almost felt as quick as when Anakin Skywalker flipped and went to the dark side. The whole murder of the young Padawans, just a little too quick in my book. That's just me. I know Star Wars fans might go against the grain on that, but hey, that's my opinion. But in relation to David here, I'm looking for grounds, and I was looking for grounds this episode to see, all right, what are going to be those seedlings that get planted for him to go mad, for him to, go ballistic and to become the threat that future Sid fears, to become the threat that others sort of see lurking in the shadows, right behind his the personality, the facade that he puts on. And I really think that Farouk is manipulating this the best that he possibly can, or to try to, with the knowledge he has now, obviously use his friends, use other factors, whatever he can to turn the tide in his favor, to get his body back, to subvert David, and to step into the power, the godhood he believes he deserves himself. So, relating back to that scene real quick, it's a really twisted look into the future. It's a scene of David sitting on some kind of throne, and he's got a gorged Lenny at the foot of that throne. It looks like she's cannibalized the whole group of men, or I have no idea what that's about. But we're quickly pulled back out of that when we hit the present, and we're brought to a scene. It's kind of somewhere where we left off with David and Sid before. They're now out in the desert, and there's this really funny, almost disturbing imagery of this. It looks like a drain in the middle of this desert. Now, if you recall, this landscape is constantly shifting. The monastery is constantly on the move. I'm a little annoyed here because I still don't know the secret that the Shadow King was talking about last episode. He said, you wander out here forever unless you figure out the secret. Look, whatever the secret was, it felt like it just fell into their lap. So whatever. But here we are. Sid ventures out on her own, and she finds this. Looks like a drain hole, and the funniest part, there's like a bathtub stopper, slightly a huge stopper away from it, and she's wondering what the heck this thing is. A rabbit, an impaled rabbit, comes flying out of this hole. And this is the stuff we expect from Legion. Textbook. And Sid immediately tries to pull the hook out of its body. And as predictably as you can probably tell, as she does that, said hook actually gets in her hand and yanks her down into the hole. And she's gone. And when David wakes up, he realizes Sid isn't there, goes on a huge search for her, and ends up actually bumbling his way to the monastery. So we cut away from David a bit, and more importantly, we get this scene of where Sid is. Now, she's in this underground maze, and she's literally being pulled in here like a hooked fish, just dragged around corners and everything else. And who does she run into? It's Melanie. Or is it? Now, the key thing I was looking for here was how far the Shadow King was willing to go to use her, or was he just using Melanie as another face, as another mask? And sure enough, it turns out he was. So now there's the automatic question of, all right, then who is David confronting? Because David, by this point, is made to the monastery. He reaches Oliver, who we think is the Shadow King, refuses to tell David where Sid is, and David goes off on a sadistic torture session. Ends up delving into Oliver's mind, who he believes is the Shadow King sitting in front of him, and tries to literally pull this secret out of his mind about where Sid is, what's happening, and what's going on, but he refuses to tell, no matter what happens to him. So as David is torturing, it was actually Oliver, the Shadow King is just working his wiles on Sid, playing the mind games. And it's wild. He's played future Sid, and now he's playing present Sid as well. And all of Sid's barriers, all of her trust in David, she's forced at this point to question everything. Now, how much has David actually been honest about? How well does she actually know him? What's the face that she doesn't see? And Farouk has this ability to, there's like these horizontal monitors stationed all over the room he pulls Sid into. And each of these monitors shows a projection or a slice of a moment of time that Sid herself didn't see. This is from David's perspective, of course, of all the little things that he left out, all the little conversations. He leaving out that he when he slept with future Sid, leaving out the really small tidbits of each conversation. And Farouk was able to seize that, as minuscule as it was, and use that as a weapon against David and Sid's relationship here. And Sid tries to really hold out and really just continually refer to the fact, no, he's a good person. Things don't have to get this way. He doesn't have to go mad. But Farouk constantly keeps showing her otherwise. Just keeps playing these mind games until the point where her resistance is really worn down. This was a little bit of a bummer for me, especially with how resolute Sid was during the episode where David went to retrieve her, and how ironclad she was to this now. And if anything, the revelations, the things that were revealed to her she didn't see before, weren't necessarily, world breaking. They were small details that are obviously damaging to David and Sid's relationship. But in the same hand, I'm not sure that's enough on its own merit to consider him a stark, raving, world-killing psychopath. David might be exhibiting potential to do that. You could argue he had that potential from the very start with his power set. It's insane. Shadow King himself has even said it's basically godlike, and has equated David to himself multiple times. But despite all that, Sid is doubting herself. She's doubting so much now, and she's done so to the point where she's starting to sound a lot like future Sid. Really turning her resolution around to sort of just following David to the point of thinking, hey, I got to stop him, whatever he's doing. So, hey, I'll hold out hope against hope. Sid has surprised before, and her way of stopping him may not be something as direct as we might think, or could be. Uh, the other cool thing about this episode was seeing how David's plan came together. As you remember, he placed a la Inception style ideas in everyone's mind to show up desert at certain points with certain things to help him set up this trap for the Shadow King. Now, Lenny arrived some time ago. We go back and we get a short flashback and actually see what she was doing. There's this almost cartoon style scene where she finds the drain, the huge hole with the bathroom plug in the middle of the desert. I love that image. And she's got the weapon. We're all wondering, okay, what exactly does this thing look like? We've only seen some flashes of it, but it looks like this sniper rifle. And she just checks it out, and she kind of pulls it out of this really little box and then stuffs it back in. It was literally something from Saturday morning, but she looks for where the monastery's at. And in the meantime, the team Carrie and his group are also searching for David. They find traces of Lenny, but a whole gang of these monks end up climbing up out of the drain hole with these. That's the way I can describe it, is like supersonic bolas. These bolas that emit a sound frequency that makes people sick, makes them pass out, vomit, everything. And everyone's down except Fighting Carrie. She uh, manages to push through the sound frequency to block things out, and she focuses. She gets a staff out and just starts going to town on all the monks that ended up attacking her team. This is as crazy as the scene was. There's a lot of big slow mo action and a big choreographed scene. I think there was a little bit of a missed opportunity here for some really really crazy martial arts stuff to really show how capable Carrie is. The scene itself felt a little more like a montage than just a flowing piece as one, and that kind of jilted me a bit. It just kind of threw me off a bit, especially being so close to a finale where a character like this, is going to be in plenty of action scenes, but there's still a little bit more that can happen. There's a little something that's set up for next episode that I should actually go into right now. So after Carrie ends up dealing wave after wave after wave, what I'll call the Supersonic Bola Monks, should trademark that band name. That could be awesome. Anyway, after she deals with that, Lenny ends up finishing off a couple of the stragglers, and she decides to wait on the surface while Carrie goes after her shared body counterpart, Carrie, who actually ended up getting pulled down into the hole by the very last monk. So as he escapes, Carrie is pulled down, and now our Fighting Carrie goes to pursue. And sure enough, as she makes it down to the maze, and she sees something terrifying, and we've seen some cuts of this from Carrie's perspective. In my opinion, and this is weird because I expected Shadow King versus David or something like that to be the big highlight of this episode, or maybe some of the imagery. But for me, it was the Minotaur. Now, keep in mind, a masterful thing the Shadow King is able to do is when he starts manipulating somebody, he gets access to their innermost fears, everything about them, and can make those manifest. When we have that here, the Minotaur that we saw back in the episode where the group with David, Autonomy, and Carrie freed Melanie from her own mind maze. Here it is again. It's back, wheelchair and crutches and all, but Farouk has empowered it. He actually manages to help it break free of its restraints fully and really morphs it into a new body, a much stronger body. It's a lot more imposing, menacing. The thing can run up walls and crawl across ceilings and crazy stuff, and has like it expanded its head out and has like these glowing like crazy like ember skull eyes. It's nuts. It's nuts. It was cool too. Really cool effect. But anywho, Farouk has commanded this thing to go on a killing spree, and that it does with gusto. some of Admiral Fukuyama's droids end up running into this thing in the labyrinth, and well, it goes about how you'd imagine. Um, I'm sorry, skinny mustache female men versus empowered minotaur. It's just not working. In fact, I I thought the scene was always kind of silly. I was trying to figure out what they plan to do against this thing because scientist Carey, he's running the opposite direction from this thing. He's running down the hall, and he tells them, it's on the ceiling, and he just gets out of dodge. And Fukuyama's droids just kind of brush it off, and they just climb up the wall and get on the ceiling themselves. And they see this thing coming, like Rampage and Adam, and they just kind of crawl into it, and it's you just get a camera cutaway. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You know how that went. But I just kind of chuckled at that. I said, what did they intend to do? They side whatever. But in any case, by the time fighting Carrie comes through the same passage, she sees some of the droids that have just been ripped apart. One of them's in half, and another's like missing limbs and everything. So finally, she makes her way through the rest of the hall, and she catches up with Sid, who's just in a state of reflection, trying to figure all this out. And she's come to the conclusion, I have to stop David now. He's the monster, not Farouk. And I come on, Sid, not yet. Don't do this. Oh well. Well, they don't get a whole lot of time to reflect on things, though. The Minotaur is right hot on the heels of Carrie, and Sid decides to lead the charge and ends up attacking it. And the last we see, we're left with Sid and Carrie fighting together, trying to stop this thing. It's not looking good, though. Sid just took a Monday Night Raw choke slam, and it looks like Carrie took a backhand or two. So by next episode, we'll see how they dealt with that. If they deal with that, I'm hoping so. But if not, who knows? That all leads to the big pinnacle point at the end of this episode, and that is the showdown. The table's been laid. Farouk has now found his body. He's reunited with it. Near the end of the episode, he used Melanie's body to get there. Finally, but once he reunites with himself, he heads to the surface, and he runs into Clark's team that had come out to this place too. And remember, they had a role too, and it turns out their role was to actually use this massive tuning fork looking device. And David was saying when this is rung, it renders mutants like him, those with really powerful psychic abilities, just completely inert, turns them into normal men for at least a few minutes, and that would at least give them a chance. So, but it's too late. Shadow King gets there first. It looks like he kills Clark and most of his squad and tosses the pitchfork way over the horizon. And right as he's at the height of flexing his own power, David shows up, and this is it. The season finale looks like we'll pick up right here, and we will go straight into David versus the Shadow King. So we got a lot of stuff in the air. Please stay tuned. Stay with us for our last review for this season. That will be coming to you next week. Overall, though, for this episode, in terms of imagery, sound, this is what we started watching Legion for. If you've been keeping up with this series, I don't think that'll let you down on this one. In fact, some of the just wacky, off the wall imagery, especially with the drain that's just in the desert, that's just so weird, but it works for this series so well. And as well as a lot of the sound elements, the way that a lot of the scene transitions work. I'm especially thinking of the scene with the monks using their supersonic bolas, and you go from just a high-pitched frequency, and that transitions right into a melody and then like a full music theme really well, actually. So that was cool. So good stuff on all sides. Some awkward kind of just goofy moments, but I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10. It was a fun episode, fun ride, and I am on my tippy toes to see what goes down next week and how this all ends. So I hope all of you come back, that you come on back out to listen one more time for our season finale. Thank you again for tuning in. we'll catch you soon. Hey people, thank you for tuning into this episode and taking a listen. If you like our content, if you like what you're listening to, or anything we go over, hey, please, we would not only love to hear more from you, but it'd be great if you could throw some support. You can subscribe right below. Also, you can toss us a line anytime. That's ksongmedia@gmail.com. Of course, you can tune in for our channel anytime for movie reviews, game reviews, a lot of random wacky stuff. Who knows what you'll hear. And of course, our episode each week where we're bringing the nerdiest things we can find, dig up, and maybe not find. Maybe the stuff that just drops in our laps. But anyway, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We hope to hear from you again later. Take care.